Hi, my name is Gibson, and I'm the co-owner and creator of the Personal Development School. This is your daily breakthrough video, and in this video, I want to talk with you a little bit about the different types of deactivating strategies for fearful avoidance specifically. I actually think of all three insecure attachment styles. Talking about activating and deactivating strategies is most important for the fearful avoidant because I think that their activating and deactivating sides can be very confusing, really keep them in that state of ambivalence, and fearful avoidance the most out of any insecure attachment style become identified with these things. So I'm going to talk to you all about what that means in this video. Before I dive into the content, a really quick reminder, we are doing everything we can right now to support our community. I'm making a daily video almost every day as much as I possibly can. And we're offering scholarships. You can contact my team at info@personaldevelopmentschool.com for different scholarship options. And we are also offering 25% off bundles right now. So for memberships who are here on an ongoing basis. So 3 months, 6 months, 12 months. And the coupon code is with you, all one word, and it's for 25% off. So somewhat substantial to just really support everybody right now, basically. One thing that is in there as well is we have a sense of community that we're really building. I'm blown away literally every day when I read the friggin' Facebook comments and the comments in the members lounge inside the school, just like with how supportive everybody is, and especially in our live webinars. We have 3 live webinars every week where people can ask their questions to me live. I host them. They're an hour and a half in length usually. I say an hour, but I always end up staying there really late because they're really fun to do, honestly. And we talk about specific things, and people can share personal questions and connect with other people. And for anybody who's watching this who is a member of our school, I just, thank you from the bottom of my heart for how you show up. Like, I'm so amazed and so impressed, and everybody's so insightful and learning so quickly. And just a big thank you to everybody, and to everybody here just on the YouTube channel as well, who shows up, who learns, who's working on themselves, and who's doing something positive for everybody else by working on themselves. And that will impact how they show up in all their other relationships. And it has a really nice net ripple effect that sort of spills outwards. So, okay, so let's talk about this. Types of deactivating strategies. In this video specifically, we're going to do the activating and the deactivating side. And in another video series, because honestly, I want to give a lot of value in it. I don't want to just skim the surface, because these are not skim the surface topics, to be quite honest. They deeply impact human beings and their attachment styles. So what I'm basically doing right now is a series about the types of deactivating strategies and what they more specifically look like for the different insecure attachment styles. And then I'll do a separate video about strategies to break through some of these things specifically, okay? So 6 types of activating but also deactivating strategies for the fearful avoidance specifically. Number 1, they share physical distancing deactivating strategies with the dismissive avoidant, where they can, when they're, and you know this, if you're a fearful avoidant watching this, when you're angry, you're like, don't touch me, don't come near me, right? Now, that is usually smaller than your activating side where you want closeness. So usually you'll see that that only happens if you're really upset or really angry. You need that physical space, that flee mechanism sort of kicks on, that flight mechanism, right? At a subconscious level. And then the other side of that is that sometimes the fearful avoidant activates very much through physical closeness. They really want affection. Sometimes after a fight, you're making up with your partner and you really want that physical closeness. You want to be hugged or held or connected to. And this is a huge pattern I've noticed amongst all fearful avoidance, is that sort of polarity there. And again, you'll see that there are these polarities, which can create these really high highs, but then these really low lows, and it can be confusing and make relationships challenging and difficult because of that disparity between the two sides. And the more healthy and healed we become, the more in balance we become, and the more rooted we are in fulfillment and joy, instead of that pleasure and pain cycle that starts to happen instead. So again, in a separate video, I'm going to teach you how to balance these things out. But that's number 1. And I will mention in there that fearful avoidance also can activate through physical intimacy. So like sex specifically, they can activate and have these activating strategies to get back on good terms that way, or reconnect that way if there's a problem in the relationship, and these sorts of things. Number 2, fearful avoidants also have vulnerability hangovers similar to dismissive avoidance. However, they can also have the polarity of being an oversharer as well. I'm sure a lot of you guys who are fearful avoidance watching this can identify with being very private, very quiet, not sharing. And then all of a sudden, you know, you have these moments of super sharing with people and being really open. Now, there will also be a pattern in there that's like you share more, the more comfortable you feel with somebody, and that's different. But then sometimes you might have these like blips of like oversharing with somewhat of a stranger, maybe when you're in emotional distress, or maybe you're just having a really good day and you feel like, you know, sharing all your things that are going on in your life or whatever it might be. So you'll have those like polarities there. And sometimes the oversharing will create that need to pull back afterwards because you feel like, oh no, and there will be sometimes a feeling of shame there. And I just want you to know that like it's not wrong to share. It's the shame comes from the stored subconscious associations you've built into being vulnerable or to being too open or being seen too directly, because a lot of those things in childhood didn't feel good, right? They didn't, sometimes vulnerability, you know, got you rejected, or sometimes being seen too much put you at the center of attention and bad things happen then. And so those vulnerability hangovers are actually those old stored associations at a subconscious level that have been imprinted in you being activated. And it's like you re-give that old meaning to a new situation all these days later on in your life. So one flip version of that I see with fearful avoidance too sometimes is that they will hide themselves by only talking about the other person that they're with or the other people they're with. They will ask so many questions and they'll try to get to know other people so much that it acts as a barrier and creates this sort of like invisible cloak around themselves. And that's just another strategy that fearful avoidance can use to deactivate in a way, but it's also a form of activating at the same time because it's about getting closer, getting to know the person. And where that comes from is usually you felt safer in that because a lot of your stored associations and the rules your subconscious mind learned to play by were that if you could talk to other people about themselves more in your childhood or in earlier relationship situations, you got that one-way emotional connection. But as soon as it became about you too much, that was often taken away. So sometimes you go back and play on those grounds because it feels safe, right? Number 3, trigger deactivating. These are extreme deactivating strategies for fearful avoidance. Fearful avoidance, when they are triggered, they deactivate way more intensely than a dismissive avoidant. Dismissive avoidance can be deactivating more frequently, but I would say nobody deactivates as intensely as the fearful avoidant, to the point where sometimes fearful avoidance can be like, I want to get up and leave the relationship and all these things. And what's happening is it's all these old painful stored associations from the past, all the unresolved traumas that are imprinted into your subconscious that you haven't resolved. And so there are these little minefields waiting to go off. And when they go off, they trigger a very strong fight or flight mechanism because it's like a safety mechanism that you're essentially trying to protect yourself with. And so that extreme fight or flight, that's actually the roots of it, if that makes sense. So in this, when this happens, they'll have really painful thoughts about the relationship or the people that in their life, like, they're terrible, they're awful, I need to get away from them, they've never understood me, like these sorts of things. And a lot of those wounds are actually about the history, your past, and less about this person. And then sometimes you'll kind of sober up from that experience. And I don't mean like that you're like drinking or something like that. I mean like actually you get so consumed by your emotions and neurochemical reactions that they impact the way you see your world when they're triggered. And then you come out of that emotional state, and then sometimes it'll trigger the other polarity, which is the extreme activating strategies, the guilt, the remorse, the regret, and then wanting that connection again. And then sometimes you'll go way, way, way in there to try to fix things. And this can also leave you vulnerable to, especially if you're with somebody who's more avoidant, or even somebody who's secure and like doesn't know what to have just made of your emotional reaction. Sometimes they'll put a little bit of wall or hesitation up and you'll feel this like, oh, I'm rejected all over again pain. Like, oh, you hurt me. I was really hurt. Then I reacted the way I did. Then I felt guilty. So then I came back towards you. And then your coldness, when I'm trying so hard to come back in at 100 miles an hour, feels like a rejection all over again. And it can re-trigger deactivating strategies to come up. So it's just something you want to be aware of. Again, I will make a follow-up video about how to break through this. I still have to make another anxious attachment video from a past series. Sometimes I have these ideas and I like need to put a video out right away. and then I get off track with the series, but I didn't forget things. I'm also going to make more videos about friendships and attachment styles too. So next one, comparison deactivating. Fearful avoidants like to compare. It's not like to other people. They tend to not be very competitive with other people to a certain degree. Well, even that's like a polarity. With a lot of people, they won't. With certain people, they can be. But comparison deactivating in the sense of they can, when their emotional needs are unmet, or their needs for closeness or safety or trust are unmet, the fearful avoidant, as a form of deactivating strategy to try to put a buffer between themselves and their partner, they start thinking about, oh, what if I was with somebody like that? Or what if I was dating somebody like this? And they fantasize or infatuate with these different people and things. And really, a lot of it is just a subconscious protective mechanism trying to create a buffer between you and somebody else. And what you want to do with that is be able to be like, okay, what needs am I not getting met in relationships that's causing me to deactivate by trying to get those needs met in a fantasy of being with somebody else? Okay, I'll go through that in a follow-up video about that specifically, how to break through it, but just a side note there. Last two, distrust deactivation. As soon as trust seems to be threatened, the potential for trust, even if somebody didn't do anything wrong, let's say you have a partner who's going away for the weekend with their friends, and maybe you don't like one of their friends, or maybe you just have fears around that, or a bad experience from the past happened and it's re-triggering that. Even if your partner didn't do anything untrustworthy, a lot of deactivating strategies about thinking how you don't need the relationship, you don't need this anymore, can't do this, these type of painful thoughts can happen. And again, that's not necessarily about your relationship. That's more about your fears and the distrust feelings coming up. And it's that you don't need anymore. You're like, I don't want to deal with this pain anymore. So it's not necessarily always about the person, but about the wounds that are triggered. And again, like, there's ways to subconsciously reprogram this. To be honest, like, I can put tons of stuff in videos, and I will, and I'll put lots of strategies and tools. The best things you're ever going to get in so much detail with workbooks and step-by-step explained in like results-oriented format is going to be inside the school. And it's one of the best courses for it is Master Your Emotional State and Reprogram Your Subconscious Beliefs, because it's like a deep dive into that and understanding it and the mechanics, and then 7 different reprogramming strategies and tools you can use and figure out which resonates with you most and all that stuff. But I will put up follow-up things and like early exercises and things you can do here. So last one, type of deactivating strategies, infatuation deactivation, okay? And this can be something very separate. This doesn't have to be because something's not being met in your relationship to a certain degree. This can be because there's a trait or quality within you that's repressed, that somebody expresses, and because the subconscious mind is designed to create wholeness, it wants to attach to those traits. And so, you know, it can also be, we can also infatuate because of unmet needs and things like that. But when it's not out of like comparison and frustration towards your partner, when it just happens, what that's actually about is you needing to integrate your sense of wholeness. And so no matter which way we frame it or shape it, when we are in a relationship, if you infatuate with somebody else, and as you like, hopefully you can heal and go through these things and do the work, and these things go away. Like, it's just because you have these things as your attachment style is still a little bit insecure, and maybe you're just learning about these things, or you're new to them, or you're just starting to work on them, doesn't mean these things stick around forever. But I just want to be clear that anytime there's an infatuation while you're in a relationship with somebody else, that's still a form of your brain creating a buffer between yourself. It's like an invisible wall. You can think of it that way. So they're important to recognize. And then all of these things you want to use as feedback mechanisms, that there are underlying root causes that are springing these things into action that you want to address. So stay tuned, because in a follow-up video, after I do the ones for the anxious preoccupied attachment style, I will do strategies to break through these things in more detail. So thank you for watching. I hope this all makes sense to you, and thank you for being a part of this community and liking and sharing and subscribing to the channel, and I will see you in the next video.